So a couple of days I asked you guys to submit to me what some of your most unpopular or your hottest D&D takes were, so I thought it might be kind of a fun idea to go through a few of them and to tier rank them and see what some of the spicier things that you guys had to say was. Alright, so you can see we have 5 tier ranks created here. We've got Red Dragon's Breath, Fireball in a Small Room, Campfire on a Rainy Night, Cold as a Lich's Hands, and Banished Straight to the Plane of Ice. So, like I said, we're going to go through some of the submissions that you guys had put forward, and we're going to see where some of them land. Alright, so first up we got It's Way Too Easy to Heal and Face No Consequences for Going Down and Being Revived. I'm not exactly sure what about this is particularly spicy or hot. I think this is one of the most common complaints, more or less, I guess, that's been kind of levied against 5e since its release like a decade ago. That being said, I mean, it is kind of fairly easy to die at lower levels, so I don't think I'm going to banish this one straight to the Plane of Ice. I do think we're probably looking at Cold as a Lich's Hands. So yeah, Too Easy to Heal is going to be dropped in Cold as a Lich's Hands. That feels right. Alright, next up is having to keep track of spell components, especially in the case of spells that require an expensive material component, makes the game more fun. Fun feels like a bit of a strong word. I'm going to go with that. Okay. I can see a world where there's a specific type of player, specific type of group that really enjoys that kind of nuanced game within a game, and really enjoys the kind of weird and wonky rules that spellcasting brings, that spell components bring to that. I can see that, and I'm kind of here for it, because it also kind of makes you think about spells in a little bit of a different way. Instead of it's just like your spell slot, you can think of your resources a little bit differently. So I can see why someone might enjoy that. I don't think that's going to be the case for most people. I can appreciate it, but I also use focuses. So I don't think I'm going to put it, I think I'm going to go ahead and put the components as more fun. We're going to drop that in Fireball in a Small Room. I think that's about right. Have you ever finished combat and then wanted to extract some parts of a monster because you wanted to do something really cool and interesting with it, but then you kind of just ended up forgetting all about it, and maybe the parts kind of go rotten in your bag of holding, or maybe you did do something with it, but it ended up just kind of being a little bit lackluster and kind of boring? Well, all of that ends with the sponsor of this week's video, the Tome of Intangible Treasures 2 by Lone Colossus Games, which is live on BackerKit now. Let's face it, sometimes just rolling on or digging through tables and tables of magic items is not exactly the most exhilarating thing, and can get pretty boring. But the Tome of Intangible Treasures 2 flips that on its head by providing you with way more creative and unique things to offer your players that aren't just a slightly better sword. This book is an absolute trove of goodies that contains over 100 new monsters, 100 charms, which are these really cool new consumables, 200 boons, which are item-like rewards that are granted to you by anything from a literal god to mere pixies. But more importantly, it contains a fresh harvesting and ritual system that allows you to enchant those boons, charms, and monster harvestings onto characters to provide them with rewards that can continue to grow and get better over time. So take your treasure game to the next level with the Tome of Intangible Treasures 2 by Lone Colossus Games using my link in the description or the pinned comment below. Okay, the next one is you don't need to roll for anything, it's not fun to fail, and DM shouldn't gatekeep information that's usually asked by the player behind arbitrary rolls. I don't even know what to think about that. This feels like a pretty spicy take. You don't need to roll for everything. So I mean, if we take it in pieces, I kind of agree with that. I think asking players to roll for things unnecessarily, if they're guaranteed to succeed or if they're guaranteed to fail, I think that's completely unnecessary. So I'm here for that. It's not fun to fail. I think kind of undermines a lot of the premise of the game. Like, I think if you can't fail, I don't really know what you're doing. Like that's sort of, I mean, like that's kind of like one of the conceits of the game is that, you might succeed and you might fail. And that's kind of what adds to a lot of the tension of a lot of moments is whether or not someone is going to fail. So if you could just like always hit or always succeed, I'm not really feeling like what the purpose of a lot of things are. So I'm going to go ahead and drop that as well. That's going to go straight into Fireball in a Small Room. Don't roll for everything. Yeah, Fireball in a Small Room. I don't really get it. You know what though? You do you. Live your truth. All right, next one is that the game is fun to play. I kind of wish that this wasn't as hot of a take as this person thinks that it is. But the reality is that it probably is on the hot-ish side. But like obviously 5e is a super popular game and a lot of people enjoy it and tons of people have fun with it. But at the same time, it's so easy to become overwhelmed and inundated with all the people if you spend any time in online communities telling you just how much 5e sucks and how much there's so many other better games. And like that might be true. That might be true for a large subset of people. But I do agree with this one here. I do think 5e is actually a lot of fun to play. And obviously, given the popularity of the game, I don't think we can really say it's particularly hot. I'm going to go with Campfire on a Rainy Night. Yeah, just straight down the middle. That feels good. All right, next up we got nerfing Paladin's Smite in 2024 rules was a great decision, actually. So, I mean, I'll just say that I hard agree with this statement. I made a video about it a long time ago, like in the first version of the UA where we saw the Paladin, way before it landed on what it ended up being. I'm not going to say that what they ended up going with was perfect. I don't really think that it is ideal, but I really do think that nerfing Smite was a pretty necessary thing to do. There were so many other Smite spells that existed, and they were basically irrelevant because of how prevalent and how powerful Divine Smite was. Your Smite slots were used for very few other things. So I think it was an important thing to do. Again, I don't really know that they did it the best way possible, but I know a lot of people disagree with this. So I do think it's a pretty hot take. I'm going to go ahead and put this one in Fireball in a Small Room as well. That feels, yeah, Fireball in a Small Room. I think there's a lot of people that are really mad about the nerf to Smite and the nerf to what they feel is a nerf to Paladin overall. Next up we got, it's really not that bad when a character dies. Yeah, I mean, I largely agree with the statement. I think most people probably would as well. I don't think a lot of players are like actively going out of their way to have their characters killed. I know some are. They kind of live for that. They live for the moment of their character's death. But I don't really think that like too many people are going to be like, crippled and devastated by the loss of their character. You don't really necessarily want it to happen, though. I mean, even when I ran a poll about this a while ago, and it didn't seem like a lot of people were going to be that upset about it. I don't think this is that hot of a take. I think this is pretty cool, to be honest. I'm going to go, this feels cold as a Lich's hands. I don't think we're banishing this straight to the plane of ice just yet. But, yeah, we're going to go, yeah, character death is not that bad. We're going to go that in cold as a Lich's hands. That feels right. Next one says, tying ability score increases to race sucks. If you want to play a game with big and strong orc, you can still do it. Making races less flexible doesn't make the game more fun. It just actively penalizes you for trying new combos. I'm not sure if this person has read the 2024 rules, given that is basically not a thing anymore. So really, I don't think that there's anywhere that this can go except for banish straight to the plane of ice. Because, yeah, it seems like Wizards of the Coast agrees. I think most people are pretty happy to see that ability score increases being tied to race are gone. So yeah, that's going straight to the plane of ice. Okay, this one is the optimal group size is 2. I'm not sure that a lot of people are going to feel that way. I definitely don't feel that way. I find like 2, sometimes I even feel like 3 doesn't even feel like quite enough to really kind of settle in and have good engagement and good connection with the other people playing. It can be good. 3 is like fine, but for me, like 4 is the optimal number. Like 4 feels great whenever I play with my groups. 2, I don't know. That doesn't feel like a ton of fun to me. I'm sure it is for this person, and I'm sure there are a non-zero amount of people that are going to agree with that, with the optimal group size being 2. People put a poll out on that. But that feels like I think that's going to be our first Red Dragon's Breath. I think we're going to do it. This is going in Red Dragon's Breath. That's right. Next we got ban multiclassing, and that's a strong take. Multiclassing for a lot of people is like the reason they play the game, but at the same time, I also know that like a lot of people feel like many of the issues that 5e has largely stem from multiclassing. It's part of why they potentially felt the need to bump all the subclasses back to 3rd level, so there's not such crazy strong 1-level dips. And it also just kind of really constrains a lot of the ways that classes can be designed in the early levels, because you don't want to make it so it's so easy to dip into something and then get just astronomical and completely unbalanced levels of power. So I kind of see where they're getting at. I know that if they did, I feel like a ton of people would be like really, really mad about it. I think that feels like a pretty strong take. I do feel like more people are probably in favor of multiclassing, at least within the community, like the stronger D&D community. I'm going to go put that in Fireball in a Small Room as well. That's a hot take. Next up is 2024 is a genuinely universal improvement to 5th edition, but I still hate that it even exists. I'm honestly not sure that I've ever read anything that I've agreed with more in my entire life. I really do think, like, across the board, like, or at least by and large, just about everything in 2024 is a improvement over 2014. It's so much better in so many ways. I'm not going to say everything is perfect, because nothing ever is, but it really does get a lot of the issues resolved that we kind of had in 2014. But I also agree that I hate that it exists. I don't think it did need to. I think what we got with the 2024 Player's Handbook could have just been like another Tasha's, and I would have been way more excited about it. And I think a lot of people would, probably, about a 6th edition, something truly innovative or revolutionary that really fundamentally changed the game in a much more significant way than just like a significant tightening up of the rules. I think a lot of people probably kind of feel the same sort of way. So I don't really think this is a particularly hot take. I think I'm going to go with Campfire on a Rainy Night. I do really agree with this take, but I think a lot of people kind of feel the same way. Like, once you really settle in and play and you've read the rules, it feels good. But it didn't need to exist. All right, next one is rolling for stats is stupid. I feel personally attacked. It sucks when you have a character roll 3 18s in their sheet, and then another character couldn't roll above a 15. It just creates frustration and imbalance. Yeah, I mean, I can totally see that, but like I said, I feel personally attacked because we actually do roll for stats on my table. For all of us, we find it's the most fun and kind of enjoyable way to do it. I think it's particularly better if you are playing in a group where people don't really care if the person sitting next to them might be like marginally better at a certain thing than they are. I know for us, that's definitely the case. Like, in my last campaign, my brother was playing a ranger, and he ended up with a 3 in his charisma score, and he was totally fine with it. It ended up actually being a ton of fun, like, because he kind of leaned into it, but not like in an obnoxious way. He didn't like detract from the game or anything like that. It ended up being a ton of fun, just having him really just sort of lean into the awkwardness and the weird sort of shenanigans that happen with a character that has a 3. And he did it really well, and we all just kind of had fun and enjoyed the game as a result. So now, I mean, like, having said all that, I do also know that a lot of people hate rolling for stats, and I know that a lot of people really enjoy the kind of the level playing field that not rolling for stats kind of creates. So I think this is a pretty cool take. I think this is going to go in Cold as a Lich's hands. I think I remember when I ran that poll, like, most people said that they really did not enjoy rolling for stats. The vast majority of people seem to prefer point buy, which in my opinion is probably the worst and the least fun way to do it. All right, the next one's got a couple. We're just going to go with the first one. As the ideal group size is 8+. Okay, I'm just going to save the time. We're just going to go ahead. It's actually kind of funny. The two Red Dragon's Breath are just both about optimal group sizes right now. That it's 2 and that it's 8. I don't see how a group of 8+ is really fun at all. Maybe if it's like a West Marches style campaign and people are kind of like weaving in and out, sure, like I can see that. But like, I ran a game with 6 people in it for like a year and a half, and that was a lot. Like, it was kind of exhausting. Every session, you really kind of felt like there was so much going on. I can't imagine sitting down with 8 people for a year or 2 years or anything even close to that and actually still kind of having fun. I mean, you really got to be committed in a very different kind of way. So, I mean, again, props to you, live your best life, but that's Red Dragon's Breath. All right, next one is I don't have to use all official content. I'm not really sure what they're trying to get at here. Do you mean that you don't have to use, I guess it kind of depends on what they mean. If they're talking like, I don't need to allow every official book in my game, I think that's a pretty uncontroversial take. I think it's kind of expected that some people will set like, or DMs will set like, boundaries or guidelines where you can use, X, things from campaign settings. But if they're just saying like, I don't have to use exclusively official content, and I think they can use homebrew in their games, I think that's even less of a controversial take. This is going straight to the plane of ice. Sorry, but yeah, that's definitely going straight to the plane of ice. So the next one is that Bard should not be a full caster. That's pretty spicy. I know a lot of people love Bard. It does feel like a really, really powerful and very versatile class that also gets a ton of spell slots. So, I mean, and even especially now, like in 2024, where they can basically pick, with new magical secrets, they can pick basically spells from any class list except for like what druid, paladin, sorcerer, those kinds of things. So that's a hot take. I'm not really sure what to think about that. It would definitely need to have a lot of compensation if they weren't. Like completely redesigning what Bardic Inspiration looks like, getting more dice, being able to do more different things, I would imagine. Because obviously it's so fixated right now on being a full caster. So there's a lot going on there. I can see what they're getting at. I don't hate the take, but I definitely think that's a hot one. I think that's going to be Fireball in a small room. All right, next up we got carry weight, including coins, ammo, rations, water, tokens, etc. should all be tracked as per raw, and you should know where your character carries each item. Just that's Red Dragon's Breath if I've ever seen it. I mean, that's a really hot take. I don't really know anyone that uses like strict encumbrance rules. I know on the last community quiz show thing that I did, Diana mentioned that she does like actually track individual pieces of ammo, which we all thought was pretty wild. But obviously a lot of people do like that thing. But tracking every single little bit of weight and every single coin and knowing where each individual thing is on your body just feels like a ton of management. Like at that point, you're basically playing a inventory management game. That's a hot take. That's a hot take. All right, next one is 2014 monks were actually really good, but all of the statistics that we generally use to measure classes didn't measure what they were good at. I think there's a lot of truth to that, but at the same time, I think a lot of people would die on the hill that the monk, especially the 2014 monk, was just absolute hot garbage. Fun fact, the first class I ever played in 5e was a monk. His name was Hadari Fist Whisper, and he was a ton of fun to play. I actually really enjoyed it, so I have kind of always had a soft spot in my heart for the monk. Even the 2014 monk, it might not have been, as this person says, statistically good on paper, but I always enjoyed it, and I always had a soft spot in it. That doesn't change the fact that I think this take is spicy as hell, and I don't think a lot of people would agree with that. So I'm going to go ahead and put that actually in Red Dragon's Breath. I think a lot of people love to hate on the monk, so I think saying that would really shock a ton of people. Next says, Counterspell as conceived and written in 2014 or 2024 is bad. It should be a whole array of different spells that each counter different effects. I don't think that that's a particularly hot take. I think a lot of people really have never liked Counterspell. It's kind of fun to counter the enemy's thing, but the second they counter yours, you always feel bad and people don't like that. I think this has been one of the most heavily criticized elements of 5e, especially with how cheap and accessible and effective Counterspell is. A lot of people don't like the new version just because of the way that it's tied to a con save. I don't think this is a particularly spicy take. I think a lot of people would rather a game that Counterspell didn't exist and maybe Magic was just a little bit more complicated or challenging or had a different system, but I don't think a lot of people like the way that Counterspell has ever existed. I'm kind of fine with it, just because it's simple and it's easy to use, but I can definitely see a world where there's a lot of better ways where you can kind of incorporate a similar effect without it being such a drastic no, and kind of an immediate shutdown. So I don't think that's particularly spicy. I think a lot of people would agree with this take. I'm going to go ahead and put that in Cold as a Lich's hands. I don't think it's super. I don't think we're in the plane of ice, but I think that's a pretty cool take. All right, next one says 4th edition is the last time that Wizards of the Coast did anything interesting with this IP and was just ahead of its time. I think if you had this take 10 years ago, you probably would have been burned as a heretic. A lot of people really did not like 4E, but I think as time has gone on, people have really kind of come to appreciate what 4th edition offered and what it brought to the table. Yes, it was a dramatic departure from the game. There's people in my Discord that bring it up every single day. It's just this mandatory thing that goes on. Someone invariably mentions 4th edition at some point. And I do think that it probably was just a little bit ahead of its time. It was probably just too dramatic of a departure for especially coming off the back of 3rd edition. So I don't think in 2025 that this is that spicy of a take. Like I said, I think 10 years ago, this would have been whatever above Red Dragon's Breath is, it would have been above that. But I think in 2025, I think this is kind of going to end up being Campfire on a Rainy Night. I don't think it's that hot. I think a lot of people would largely agree with this sentiment, to be honest. All right, next we got the GM will fix it mentality of how D&D is developed is worse for it in the long run than Hasbro's greed. I don't disagree. I mean, yeah, like I've even mentioned it in videos before where we're talking about some kind of like some flaw or some design discussion, and people will be like, oh, it's not a problem because the GM will just do this, or I can just do this to fix it. And it's like, yes, but that doesn't actually address any of the concern. You're just saying that, okay, cool, I can fix it. You're saying it's not a problem because I can do this to fix the problem. You see how that doesn't really make any sense? And the question here is it worse than Hasbro's greed? Maybe. I think this is a pretty hot take, though. I'm going to go ahead because I think a lot of people just also love to say, like, oh, I can just do this, I can fix this, I can fix that. And I don't know if it makes them feel good or whatever, but that's a hot take, though. This is definitely going to go ahead and be in Red Dragon's Breath. All right, next is Warlock's version of spellcasting is both unfun to play and unfun to DM for. I think a lot of people might actually agree with that. I know a lot of people who've really struggled to want to play or to kind of get into playing Warlocks just because of how kind of different the spellcasting is. You get used to other classes in D&D, whether they don't have spells or some that do, and then you go over to the Warlock and it just feels very different, even though it kind of isn't. Some people I know took issue with being so dependent on short rest when no other class was. I mean, that never really bothered me, but I know that's been like a hang up for a lot of people in the community, but I don't really think this is that controversial of a take. I think it kind of goes either way. I think I'm going to put that in Campfire on a Rainy Night. Next one is 5e is kind of boring. Okay, I mean, that's just going to go straight into Banished to the Plane of Ice. Not just because like I don't disagree with it. I genuinely find 5e fun, but I think this is like one of the most played out, overhashed takes that I think we've seen in the community for a long time. A lot of people just like to parrot that a lot. So I don't think that's a particularly unpopular or hot take. So I'm just going to go ahead and banish that one straight to the Plane of Ice. All right, next one is cantrips are bad for the long-term health of the game and should be removed. That's a pretty hot take. I don't know that it's the spiciest take. I know there's a lot of people that do take issues with cantrips. Kind of having a infinitely repeatable thing that also scales and improves in power over time can be very dangerous. They're famously incredibly difficult to design for just because of that infinite repeatability. Are they bad for the long-term health of the game? Maybe. There's probably an argument to be made there. Should they be removed? I don't know. I think it's one of the things that 5e has done pretty well with. I think that is definitely kind of a hotter take, though. I'm going to go put that one in. That's going to be Fireball in a small room. Fireball in a small room. I think that's right. All right, last one we got the changes to Divine Smite are healthy for the game, and the Ranger isn't that bad. We'll ignore the Divine Smite part because we already talked about that, but the Ranger isn't that bad. I'll be clear, I've said it before, I don't think that the Ranger is bad. I think that it has a lot of strengths. There's a lot of really good things going for it. I don't think the 2014 Ranger was even necessarily bad in the right group, but it was a lot trickier to make, like, quote unquote good. I think in 2024, the Ranger is strong. I think the Ranger is a good class. It definitely tapers off the farther you go, which could be potentially problematic. But my biggest concern about the Ranger has never really been about the power or whether it was strong or not, but it's more about the design cohesion, which is something I've talked a lot about, so I'm not really going to go into detail with it here. That said, I think this take is spicy as hell, because I think that much like the Monk being good in 2014, I think a lot of people would absolutely, gladly die on the hill that the 2024 Ranger, or any Ranger, really 2014 included, is like the worst thing that's ever happened to D&D. So I'm just going to go ahead and put that one straight into Red Dragon's Breath. All right, so there we have it. That was a lot of fun. I hope you guys enjoyed looking through some of your spicy takes and seeing where they land. Maybe we'll do some more of this kind of thing in the future. Let me know if you enjoyed it in the comments. And let me know where you would have placed some of these. Otherwise, take care.